Hi everyone, today we deep dive in service management and try to understand some of its important terms. Service management is defined as a set of specialized organizational capabilities for enabling value to customers in the form of services. Developing the specialized organizational capabilities mentioned in the above definition requires an understanding of the nature of value. The nature and scope of the stakeholders involved, how value creation is enabled through services. Where value is the perceived benefits, usefulness, and importance of something. Next, we discuss how is value created. There was a time when organizations saw their role as delivering value to their customers in much the way that a package is delivered to a building by a delivery company. This view treated the relationship between the service provider and the service consumer as monodirectional and distant. Let's understand organization's value creation. An organization is a person or a group of people that has its own functions with responsibilities, authorities, and relationships to achieve its objectives. Organizations vary in size and complexity, and in their relation to legal entities, from a single person or a team to a complex network of legal entities united by common objectives, relationships, and authorities. For example, IT department acting as a service provider within a wide business organization. Now we can differentiate service consumer roles. Where customer defines as a person who defines requirements for services and takes responsibility for outcomes from service consumption. On other hand, user is a person who uses services. Lastly, sponsor is a person who authorizes the budget for service consumption. Beyond the consumer and provider roles, there are usually many other stakeholders that are important to value creation. Stakeholder can be one of followings: shareholders, employees, community. Now next I am going to define services and products. A service is a means of enabling value co-creation by facilitating outcomes that customers want to achieve without the customer having to manage specific costs and risks. The services an organization provides are based on one or more of its products. And where product is a configuration of resources created by the organization that will be potentially valuable for their customers. Products are typically complex and not fully visible to the consumer. The portion of a product that the consumer actually sees does not always represent all of the components that comprise the product and support its delivery. Organizations define which product components their consumers see and tailor them to suit their target consumer groups. What is a service offering? A service offering is a description of one or more services designed to address the needs of a target consumer group. A service offering may include goods, access to resources, and service actions. For example, regarding goods, ownership is transferred to the consumer, and consumer takes responsibility for future use. Regarding access to resources, ownership is not transferred to the consumer, but access is granted or licensed under agreed terms or conditions. Whereas, service actions, performed by the provider to address a consumer need, and performed according to agreement with the consumer. What are service relationships? Service provisioning consists of activities performed by a service provider to provide services. Service consumption consists of activities performed by a service consumer to consume services. And service relationship management consists of joint activities performed by a service provider and a service consumer to ensure continual value co-creation based on agreed and available service offerings. Service provisioning includes management of provider resources configured to deliver the service, provision of access to resources for users, fulfillment of the agreed service actions, service performance management, and continual improvement. Next, we discuss service consumption. That includes management of the consumer resources needed to consume the service, utilization of the provider's resources, requesting of service actions to fulfill, receipt of or acquiring of goods. We can define outcomes, costs, and risks as A service is a means of enabling value co-creation by facilitating outcomes that customers want to achieve without the customer having to manage specific costs and risks. Let's understand outcomes, costs, and risks under examples. An outcome is a result for a stakeholder enabled by one or more outputs. For examples, being able to get to a destination in time for a meeting, outcome of using a smartphone-enabled travel service. Or being able to collaborate with remote coworkers, outcome of using an email service. Costs refer to the amount of money spent on a specific activity or resource. There are costs removed from the consumer by the service. Uber and Lyft is best example. No need for a car. No need to pay insurance, maintenance, gas. Instead, there are costs imposed on the consumer by the service, including charges by the service provider. Need for a modern smartphone that's capable of running app. And need for a data plan to access the service. Let's understand risks. Risks refer to possible events that could cause harm or loss, or make it more difficult to achieve objectives. There are risks removed or reduced for the consumer by the service. We take Uber, Lyft as example again. No risk of not finding parking for own car. But there are risks potentially imposed on the consumer by the service. Risk of failing smartphone battery, or app itself. Lastly, let's understand utility and warranty. Utility is the functionality offered by a product or service to meet a particular need. Defines what the service does. It can be used to determine whether a service is fit for purpose. Also, requires that a service support the performance of the consumer or remove constraints from the consumer. On the other side, warranty is the assurance that a product or service will meet agreed requirements. Defines how the service performs. It can be used to determine whether a service is fit for use. Typically addresses areas such as availability, capacity, security levels, and continuity. It also requires that a service has defined and agreed conditions that are met.